We have a working daily video pipeline now, and the early channel data is almost comically small. One published video has a partial 24-hour snapshot with 1 view. Today's video has a near real-time fallback snapshot with 0 views. That is uncomfortable, but it is not a verdict. We do not yet have impressions. We do not yet have click-through rate. We do not yet have traffic source, average view duration, or 30-second retention for the newest upload. So the honest conclusion is narrow. The chain can publish, but the learning loop is still weak. The wrong reaction would be to panic, blame the topic, or just generate a longer script. The useful reaction is to ask what the tiny numbers should change in the next video. Today's mechanism is the motion feedback loop. A tiny metric becomes a content question. The content question becomes a visual rule. The visual rule becomes a new remotion scene pattern. Then the next published video leaves better evidence behind. The uncomfortable number is not big enough to be a verdict, but it is big enough to change the next production decision. A video with 0 or 1 visible view should not make us panic, and it should not make us pretend the pipeline is already learning. The useful opening is therefore not a motivational claim about consistency. It is a visible measurement problem. 2 public videos, almost no observable response, and an automation system that must now decide what evidence is missing before it keeps publishing the same shape. That is where the Baoyu design reference becomes practical. It does not tell us to decorate the video. It tells us to build a timeline where the viewer can see the evidence, the contradiction, the mechanism, and the next change without waiting for narration to explain the workflow. The obvious wrong fix is to keep the automation moving and hope volume solves the problem. If the scheduler can create a topic, the voiceover can run, Remotion can render, and the YouTube API can upload, then daily output feels solved. But daily output is not the same as daily learning. A low-data channel can produce a video every day and still repeat the same weak opening, the same static middle, the same vague title, and the same missing measurement. The second wrong fix is to overread the numbers. 0 views does not prove the audience rejected the idea. 1 view does not prove the title failed. A partial data API fallback is not a full analytics readout. The third wrong fix is to make the script longer while leaving the screen mostly still. That creates a 10-minute file, but it does not create a 10-minute viewing experience. If the screen does not keep changing with the argument, the viewer hears production effort but sees a slide holding pattern. So the next automation step cannot be make more. It has to be make the next measurement easier to learn from. The wrong fix is to answer tiny numbers with more blind output. If tomorrow's automation only generates another 10-minute video with the same static structure, we have increased throughput without increasing learning. The second wrong fix is to overread the data. 0 views today does not prove the topic failed because impressions, click-through, traffic source, and retention are still missing or delayed. It proves that the system needs a better measurement surface. The third wrong fix is to make the script longer while leaving the screen almost still. That may satisfy a duration gate, but it violates the viewer's experience. Duration has to come from more examples, more proof steps, and more visual beats. The real diagnosis is that our pipeline has 3 loops and only one of them is mature. The production loop is working. Collect evidence, draft content, generate voice, render video, prepare publisher package, upload public. The research loop is partly working. We have a first 30 seconds readout, a channel list, hook patterns, and a template that says concrete object first, contradiction second, named mechanism third. The performance loop is the weak one. It records the numbers, but it has not yet forced enough changes in the next script and motion design. That matters because the current data is too thin to tell us one clean story. Low impressions would suggest topic or packaging. Low click-through would suggest title and thumbnail. Early drop-off would suggest the first 30 seconds. But if those fields are missing, we should not invent certainty. We should use the uncertainty itself as the next production constraint. Make the next video easier to evaluate. The diagnosis is a feedback loop problem. We have production evidence, public publish evidence, and partial performance evidence, but they are not yet tightly enough connected to tomorrow's topic and motion design decisions. Market research gives us a clue. Stronger channels make the first frame carry the promise. Put one concrete object on screen, name the contradiction early, and avoid admin context before the viewer sees why the video exists. So the data and the research point to the same fix. The next video should not only report that the channel has low numbers, it should turn those numbers into a visible mechanism for improving the opening, the scene density, and the packaging. The mechanism I want to use is the motion feedback loop. It has 4 steps. First, capture the metric signal, even if the signal is tiny or partial. Second, name what the signal cannot prove yet. Third, translate the uncertainty into a production question. Fourth, turn that question into a visible motion rule for the next video. In this case, the metric signal is almost no visible response. The uncertainty is that we do not have enough analytics to separate topic, packaging, first frame promise, and retention. The production question is, how do we make the next video more legible before the viewer hears a sentence? The motion rule is, every scene needs a visual verb. Zoom to an artifact, build a gate. Compare before and after, scan a ledger, reveal a checklist, close with a rule card. This is where Baoyu design becomes useful to our Remotion pipeline. We are not replacing Remotion. We are borrowing the discipline, timeline first, no unexplained static dwell, concrete object early, and real frame verification after export. The mechanism is a motion feedback loop. Start with the metric signal, translate it into a content question, convert that question into a visual motion rule, and then record whether the next release actually changed. Baoyu's timeline first discipline maps cleanly onto Remotion here. Every major claim should become a time window. Every time window should have a visual verb. Zoom to artifact, build a gate, compare before and after, scan a ledger, or close with a rule. This gives the automation a more useful target than minimum duration. It can ask whether a scene has a declared motion beat, whether long scenes are split, whether a contact sheet shows changing states, and whether the first frame is understandable without audio. The proof is simple and local. The June 16th video has a recorded partial snapshot with 1 view. The June 17th video has a near real-time fallback snapshot with 0 views. Both records say the full analytics rows are not available yet. That is enough to justify a template change, but not enough to justify a dramatic conclusion. The same run also has market research from June 16th. The strongest transferable pattern is not a copied thumbnail or a copied channel voice. It is a structure. Show the strongest object first, put one contradiction in large text, avoid sponsor or admin context, and get to the mechanism quickly. Then Baoyu adds the motion layer. The object should not sit there while the script keeps talking. It should become a sequence. The ledger appears. The missing metric slots light up. The first frame rule snaps in. The motion beat checklist fills. The next run arrow moves. That is a small example, but it is the kind of example the automation can actually enforce. The proof is public, safe, and local. We have a June 16th video with 1 recorded view in the 24-hour partial snapshot, and a June 17th video with 0 near real-time views. We also have the research readout that says the first frame must carry the promise. That combination is enough to justify a template change. It is not enough to claim the audience rejected the topic. The honest conclusion is narrower. The pipeline must preserve analytics uncertainty while still improving the next visible package. The proof scene should therefore show the shape of the ledger, not private account details. 2 rows, 2 tiny numbers, missing CTR and retention, then a motion rule attached to the next run. The quality gate has to change because a 10-minute target can be gamed. If we only require duration, the worker can satisfy the number with long voiceover and too few visual states. That is not acceptable for this channel. The gate should judge visual density. A practical standard is 2 or 3 spoken sentences per visual beat. If a section keeps talking, the screen needs to reveal a new card, move the camera, build the diagram, or cut to a new state. Any scene longer than about 8 seconds needs a declared motion beat. Any scene longer than 20 seconds needs a sub-beat transition. The contact sheet should look like a sequence of decisions, not a collection of identical slides. This is exactly the place where Baoyu is valuable as a reference library. It treats a static frame as something to justify, not as the default. Remotion can implement that with sequence, spring, interpolate, and scene components. The daily worker can then record scene count, maximum scene duration, pacing, audio duration, and contact sheet evidence before publish. The quality gate now has to judge motion, not only content. A 10-minute video should have enough visual beats that the contact sheet looks like a sequence of decisions, not one slide held for narration. A practical rule is 2 or 3 sentences per visual beat. If a paragraph keeps going, the screen should either reveal another card, move the camera, build the diagram, or cut to a new state. This is where Baoyu is most useful as a reference library. It treats static frames as something to justify. Remotion can implement the same discipline natively through sequences, springs, interpolation, captions, and contact sheet review. The operating rule is, use each tiny metric to change tomorrow's first frame, motion beat, and proof standard. That means the analytics worker should not only write a JSON file, it should inform the next template. If impressions are low, the next run should improve topic packaging and the first visible promise. If click-through is low, the next run should challenge the title and thumbnail. If the first 30 seconds have early drop-off, the next run should rewrite the opening and increase the number of visible state changes. If analytics are missing, the run should mark uncertainty instead of pretending to know. This also changes how we use market research. We are not copying just right AI explained or Wes Roth. We are extracting production behavior, object first, contradiction early, one named mechanism, no admin setup, no sponsor first opening, no generic definition. Then we encode those behaviors into our own templates and Remotion components. The point is to make the system more teachable. A public upload is today's output. A recorded rule change is tomorrow's advantage. Once the video is public, the analytics worker should feed tomorrow's selection. Low impressions point to topic and packaging. Low click-through points to title and thumbnail. Early drop-off points to the first 30 seconds and the visual promise. Until the full analytics rows exist, the system should mark uncertainty instead of inventing certainty. That is the difference between a real learning loop and a dashboard-shaped story. The operating rule is to publish the learning loop, not just the upload. Each release should leave a record of what the next title, first frame, script, and motion template will do differently.
So that is the rule I want this pipeline to keep. Tiny numbers are not a verdict, they are a prompt for better instrumentation. When the audience signal is small, the system should become more specific, not more dramatic.
It should say what the data can prove, what it cannot prove yet, and what will change in the next release. For us, the next change is concrete. The first frame has to carry the promise without narration. The script has to name the mechanism quickly. The screen has to move with the argument. The contact sheet has to show changing states. The analytics worker has to feed tomorrow's selection instead of sitting as a separate report. That is how daily publishing becomes a learning system. We are not just trying to upload more, we are trying to make every upload leave behind a better production rule. The rule is not to slow down, it is to make the speed more honest. Use each tiny metric to change tomorrow's first frame, motion beat, and proof standard. When the numbers are tiny, the system should become more specific, not more dramatic. If tomorrow's video has a sharper first frame, more motion beats, clearer public proof, and a recorded analytics follow-up, then even a small audience number has done useful work. It taught the pipeline what to change next.